Hi everyone, welcome back. Hope you're enjoying all the sessions. We have another 6, including this one. So next up we have Jeff Corbin, who is the Senior Strategic Advisor for Internal Communications Consulting at Staffbase. And I'll just mention that Staffbase is one of the commsHERO sponsors. This session looks at identifying the holes in your internal communication strategy and ensuring your workforce is connected. So lots and lots of information for everybody to take away from this one. Don't forget to ask your questions for Jeff in the chat function, and we'll do that at the end of the session. So I'll hand you over to Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Good morning to everyone here that's sitting in New York with me. It's a pleasure to be here today and to have this opportunity to chat with you about a topic that is a really important one, just given the current state of the workplace and the fact that companies are now starting to return to work. And that is ensuring that all employees in a company, regardless of where they sit or where they don't sit, have equal access to information and to communications. I'm Jeff Corbin, and as you can see from the slide, I'm Senior Strategic Advisor for Internal Communications Consulting at Staffbase. For those of you who are not familiar with us at Staffbase, we are an internal communications platform that provides communications, HR professionals with a single place to connect with their employees through a branded mobile app, desktop intranet, email, other channels, including digital signage. As you could also see from this slide, before joining Staffbase, I was actually the founder and CEO of another mobile app technology company that was also focused on employee communications. It's called The Prize Mobile. I sold The Prize a couple of years ago to a private equity firm. Before that, I was the CEO of a corporate communications consulting firm in New York City. Communications has been in my DNA for the better part of my career, more than 20 years. Love it, and excited to talk to you a little bit about what I've learned. Just quickly, a little fun fact about myself. I'm a level 1 CrossFit trainer. Sunday mornings, I coach what we refer to as the weekly shred class at Empire State CrossFit. So as travel opens up, I think it has started to open up where you can travel here to the US. If you ever find yourself walking around Mamaroneck, New York, it's about a half hour north of New York City. Feel free to stop in, just mention commsHERO to me and I'll treat you to a 1-hour shred workout. So obviously I'm not here to talk about exercise, but rather as the title of this presentation suggests, and as this slide shows, I'm here to really help you prevent injury when you're getting off the tube in London. That's a joke. I can't see you, so I don't know if you're laughing, but I'll carry on. What I'm really here to talk about is minding the gap and really understanding the extent to which your employees may be disenfranchised from receiving information and communications from your organizations. So what am I talking about? Before starting at Prize Mobile, I wasn't a tech guy who just came up with a cool idea of creating an app for employee communications and engagement. Rather, I was very fortunate because I had a really smart IT professional who worked with me, who knew how to code. And together we realized that with the proliferation of mobile technology, mobile devices, thanks to Apple, to Google, and really this was just, excuse me, this was really just starting in 2011, 2012, that there was now an opportunity for companies to be able to communicate with their employees in a new and in a much more efficient and effective way, and to actually know if the information that they were creating and sending out was actually being received, or for that matter, even read. I also learned when I secured my first employee app customer, you can see on this slide, it's a company called Cisco, Fortune 100 food distribution company with more than 50,000 employees. What I learned was that there was an entire category of employee who had, in fact, been disenfranchised from information and communications just due to the fact that they weren't sitting in offices behind desks with access to computers, corporate intranets, and that many of these, believe it or not, there are 3 billion of these, what I refer to as deskless or non-desk workers, also didn't have email addresses from the companies that they work for. And as a result of this, the communications, the human resources, IT professionals who were responsible for getting information to for engaging and communicating with these people had a really difficult time doing their job to the best of their ability. Mobile technology, employee apps, I believed, could solve this problem. So this is what I mean by minding the gap. What I'm talking about are the holes that may exist in your employee communication strategy when it comes to making sure that all employees have the same ability to receive content, information, and communications. Unfortunately, in having consulted and worked with hundreds of companies around the world, uh, different sizes, industries, more often than not, there are groups of employees within your companies that don't have the same access to information as others. And the point of today's discussion is really to sensitize you to the reality of this and to give you a few things to hopefully consider and take back to your work to address this important issue. In addition to my work at Staffbase and helping their customers to define their mobile employee app intranet strategies when it comes to content, the targeting of information to different groups and classifications of employees within an organization, I'm also a principal in a consulting firm called ECA Consulting Group, where ECA stands for Employee Communications Applications, which is a category of technology that has been coined as a new technology market by Gartner. For those of you not familiar with Gartner, they're one of the leading technology analyst firms. The challenge that exists today, and which Gartner really hasn't helped with, is the fact that there are now dozens of technology solutions that are available in the area of employee communications and engagement. Many of them are claiming to solve the entire problem, but in most instances, this isn't the case. And when you look at the entire landscape of ECA, which we will in a moment, you realize that each solution is quite different and that many started with a core aspect to their technologies that was primarily focused on serving employees who had access to desktop computers. But then they had to pivot their model to try to incorporate mobile technology. And now they're claiming to solve everything when in fact they aren't able to do so. So it's critical that you understand the broader landscape of ECA, what is core to each solution. And once you have, then determine whether there are any gaps that exist, possibly because the technologies that you're using aren't reaching certain groups of employees in your organizations. So in studying the landscape of ECA, I've taken a stab at demonstrating what I'm talking about in this graphic. And as you can see, the ECA market is made up of solutions that were created specifically to address email usage, intranets, mobile apps for employee communications, as well as chat, messaging, collaboration. And then there are those that are not clear in what they actually do. And if you were to go to their websites, they actually claim to solve the overall employee experience. As I mentioned before, Gartner really hasn't helped to clarify the confusion that now exists as more and more companies are trying to break into the tech opportunity of employee communications and engagement. In fact, since I sold Apprise Mobile, I've had the opportunity in my writing, I'm a contributor to CMS Wire, in my speaking, to question Gartner for this, since I don't believe that their market guide that you can see on this slide helps communications professionals or their IT counterparts to really understand the nature of the ECA market and the many solutions that exist within it. So, for example, they include solutions that are focused on serving the needs of non-desk workers as well as desk-bound workers who, as I mentioned before, have access to computers and intranets throughout their day. In the same conversation, they mention chat and collaboration technologies that really aren't necessarily pertinent to non-desk workers who are out in the field. They also throw in project management solutions like ServiceMax. And if you know ServiceMax, it's a terrific solution specifically for field service, yet it gets grouped together in this report with all the other solutions as though they solve the same communications problem. And then in their most recent marketing guide, Gartner is now including some of the Microsoft solutions like Teams, SharePoint, Yammer. But question, what about companies that don't purchase Microsoft licenses for all their employees? And through my work, I can tell you that this constitutes a very significant number of companies, as well as employees in the global workforce. The market guide also doesn't discuss how certain solutions like Staffbase were first created to address the problem of communicating with the 3 billion deskless workers through their mobile device, but then evolved their platform to be able to also make the same content available to workers who were sitting in offices by way of an intranet solution, as well as to display the same content on digital signage. And now, with their recent merger of Banana Tag, which I'll discuss in a moment, via email newsletters, therefore making for a holistic employee communication solution that's available across multiple channels. I definitely don't want you to mistake me. Gartner plays a very important role in analyzing the landscape of technologies across the digital workplace. Rather, what I hope is to shed some light on the reality of what's going on in employee communications applications so that you're better prepared to ask the right questions and also maybe call into question why a particular solution is being considered in your organization versus another one. And this is especially important now, given the recent surge of global M&A activity that's taking place in the ECA space. And as you can see from this slide, over the past several months, there have been several notable transactions that have taken place. First, in early March, Staffbase, which is headquartered in Chemnitz, Germany, merged with Banana-Tag from Kelowna, British Columbia in Canada, to now offer internal communications professionals, as I just mentioned, the ability to reach employees through multiple channels, including the email channel. Then we also had, a couple of weeks later, Four Winds Interactive that acquired email solution provider Populo, which is headquartered in Ireland. And the strategic purpose of this acquisition to me is less obvious, since Four Winds is a market leader in digital signage. Populo, like Banana-Tag, is focused on email communications, and it's unclear if this transaction was for the purpose of actually creating a single technology platform for communications professionals by combining Four Winds Populo's technologies into one, or if the purpose was to keep the technology separate and just give their salespeople the ability to sell another type of ECA solution. We also have the recent merger or acquisition of Social Course and Dynamic Signal. And the reason why I say merger or acquisition is because the press release that announced the deal didn't specify which it is. They've since put out a couple of other press releases saying that the companies would combine as a quote unquote unified brand. And they announced that this company, the combined company, would be called First Up quite recently. But there is no mention in the press releases of what's going to happen to the two technology platforms. The thing that is interesting about this deal to me is that Social Chorus and Dynamic Signal were the utmost of competitors for years. Their technologies claim to do more or less the same thing, and both started out as focusing on employee and social advocacy. But then they had to evolve their solutions when the social media technology market started to change. So from my perspective, this was more of a private equity venture capital transaction to create a larger entity by combining revenue rather than a strategic deal to help internal communications professionals. I know that there are those out there that might disagree with me. This is just my opinion. But as I wrote in an article recently for CMS Wire, time is obviously going to tell, right? Also, there was a very recent announcement a couple of weeks ago of the acquisition of Smarp, which is headquartered in Finland, with Germany-based intranet provider Koyo. Based on what the company said in their press release announcing this transaction, it's not clear to me at this time what the eventual outcome of bringing these two companies together will be. Obviously, again, time will tell. So, as you can see, there is a lot of activity taking place in the ECA space. I'm sure there's going to be more, just given the number of companies who are in the market. The question that I continuously ask myself and would recommend that you do the same is, to the extent that companies are merging or being acquired, what is the purpose of the transaction? And is it really intended to create a comprehensive employee communication solution that will make your life easier and allow you to be more effective and efficient in your work. And that is because this is exactly what technology should be created for, to help you in internal communications, in communications, to address the challenges that you currently face and to be able to do your job better. So when you put these transactions into context with the broader ECA market, it raises the question as to how is a company supposed to determine the right application for employee communications that ensures that all employees have the benefit of information and communications. This is especially true when it comes to company intranets. And as my graphic shows, there are many intranet solutions to choose from. Nevertheless, companies who are Microsoft organizations, because their relationship started with Outlook for email many years ago, now rely on, and in many cases are reluctant to move away from Microsoft SharePoint as their intranet backbone. And as a result, they're also now trying to find ways to put Teams and Yammer to use, even though these solutions might not help certain employee constituents in their organizations, especially the deskless worker. Question whether this is necessarily the right decision, or is simply a function of the individuals who are responsible for making intranet decisions being maybe a little too conservative and not wanting to embrace change. And to prove this point, Staffbase recently conducted research in partnership with the School of Communication and Management in Berlin, where our teams ran a survey with nearly 200 intranet managers, either working on the content or the technical side. And a couple of things came out of the research that we learned. First, with respect to how they view the importance of communications technologies focused on the non-desk worker, 2 out of 5, 40% indicated that their company only provides a desktop intranet to their employees. So therefore, non-desk workers are left feeling maybe somewhat disconnected from their businesses. And then of this 40%, almost half said that given their current intranet solution, they aren't able to reach the non-desk employees. So therefore, it's not surprising that 2/3 said that their company intranets do not reach all employees. So in my opinion, this goes to show the reluctance that some have to embrace change, especially when the people who are responsible for a company's intranet know that it isn't necessarily accessible by a large portion of the workforce, therefore isn't 100% effective in its ultimate purpose of getting information and communications to all of the company's employees. We also asked during our survey the intranet managers how satisfied they were with their current intranet. And since this was an anonymous survey, the responses were, I believe, quite candid, with more than half indicating dissatisfaction, nearly a quarter extreme dissatisfaction. With respect to how their employees feel about their current intranet situation, I don't have a slide for this, but our survey revealed that 20% of employees are dissatisfied with their current intranet solution. 40% don't agree that their intranet helps simplify their workload. I believe that this is a statistic that all professionals, whether in IT, communications, or any other business unit that's responsible for getting information to employees, should be aware of and may be a bit concerned. So it's with this in mind that companies like Staffbase are working really hard to further the cause of ensuring that no employee is uncommunicated with, by providing companies with a central access point to deliver content to mobile, to desktop intranets, digital signage, email, and other channels, and to do so in a way that is easy for the non-tech savvy communications professional, folks like me, does not require the replacing of legacy systems, can sit side by side and integrate with the Microsoft ECAs, and at the same time provides employees with what's really important: an excellent end user experience and a convenient way, depending upon where they sit or how they prefer to get important information, and then for their companies to be able to better engage with them. So I know that I've spent the better part of this presentation talking about the problems that companies face when it comes to communicating with their employees. So now I'd like to help you solve the problem and really address what I mean by minding the gap when it comes to the holes that may exist in your company's internal communications and technology strategies. And to do this, as part of my consulting work at ECA Consulting, I've created a 3-step diagnostic process for determining if you have any gaps in your employee communications application technology infrastructure. It certainly can be used by IT professionals, and I recommend that you share it with your IT colleagues. But I really designed it for the less tech-savvy communications professional like myself again. So here the 3 steps are. First is to map out and really understand the structure of your company's organization, as well as the demographics of your workforce. And I'll show you what I mean about this in a moment. The next step is a little easier. It's basically take out a pen, take out a piece of paper, write down the employee communication solutions that you're presently using. And then the third, last, is to layer your ECA tech stack over your organizational structure and your workforce demographics to make sure that all employees are in fact being reached. So I'm going to share with you a case study that I think will demonstrate for you what I'm talking about. One of the more complicated organizations that I've worked with over the years is Caesars Entertainment. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Caesars. They operate hotels, casinos all around the world. When I was working with Caesars, it was before they merged with Eldorado Resorts, which in doing so, they now formed the largest casino organization in the world. Caesars Entertainment by itself was already very large. They had 50 different properties, tens of thousands of employees. They were broken down by regions. And then, as you can see on this slide, many different brands, including the famous Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, the legendary Flamingo Hotel, also in Las Vegas, as well as numerous Harrah's hotels, Planet Hollywoods. You know what I'm talking about. So for those internal communications professionals at Caesars who were responsible for communicating from headquarters in Las Vegas to each location, for them to be successful in their work and to ensure that they were able to reach the tens of thousands of employees that work for the company, it was first important that they have a solid handle on the organizational structure of Caesars Entertainment. I can't begin to tell you the number of meetings that I've sat in with companies that have included members of their C-suite, communications, HR, IT teams. One of the first things that I ask is for them to explain, to draw out for me what their organization looks like. Draw out for me an organizational diagram of their company. And what inevitably happens, especially with larger companies, is while they all know how their company is structured, they don't know how to diagram it. They all kind of just stare at each other and they don't know where to begin. But once we finally accomplish that, and then to make things more challenging, I asked them about how their workforce is comprised, to talk to me about the different types of employees that are in their workforce. Obviously, there are going to be those who work in office settings with access to computers and a company's intranet. But then there are the 3 billion deskless workers who don't have access, or maybe not easy access, to computers and a company's intranet. So once we have been able to map out the organizational structure and workforce demographics, takes a little bit of time, then it's time to look at which employee communications applications your organization is using and determine who they're reaching. Here's our workforce slide. I forgot to click this slide, so I'll just let this run through different types of employees. And then let's get to our ECA tech stack. Many of us take for granted the fact that everyone has email, right? That's not necessarily the case. And in fact, many of the 3 billion deskless workers are not provided with company email addresses. So therefore, you need to look to other ECAs to ensure that you're able to reach these individuals. And the same holds true for corporate intranets. Yes, employees might be able to access a company's intranet at home or in back of house areas, in hotels, casinos, in employee break rooms, manufacturing facilities, hospitals, but question whether this is really the most convenient way for these folks to obtain the information that's important to them, like their schedules, pay stubs, personal time off, and also question whether after working 8-hour shifts or longer, do they really want to have to go home and sit in front of a computer to get this information rather than spending time with their families? Question whether they even have Wi-Fi or decent internet service to access your intranet from their homes. And I can tell you, having traveled across the United States and the world, visited many locations that are rural in particular, many do not have decent internet access, even at this in this 21st century. One thing that has fundamentally changed over the past several years is the fact that pretty much everyone now does have a mobile device, whether it be company provided or personal. So obviously, this is where the opportunity exists for you to close the gaps that might exist in your employee communications technology situation. The problem, yet another problem, is that most companies don't provide devices to every employee and therefore need to rely on bring your own device, BYOD. And also their employees being willing to use their personal devices for work-related purposes, which we all know can be tricky for various reasons. With all this being said, the real question that every employee communications and engagement professional, or any professional whose responsibility includes getting information to employees, should be asking themselves is, am I able to reach every employee in my organization? And if you can confidently say yes to this, then you're in a pretty good place and you can carry on to your next responsibility. But if you can't, then given what's going on in the ECA market, an opportunity does exist for you to do so. It's just a function of first drawing out what your organization and workforce looks like, layering over this your current ECA technology stack to determine whether each solution currently being used is reaching each group of employees. And then to the extent that you learn that there are certain groups of employees who are not being reached, be knowledgeable enough on the ECA market, ECA technology market, to identify the solution or solutions that will allow you to get information to communicate and successfully engage with all of your employees. That's my presentation. I'm happy now to answer any questions that you have with the remaining time. I certainly can provide you with this presentation. You have my email on the slide as well as my LinkedIn profile. Please connect with me. I love to share information and get to know you a little bit better. So yeah, any questions?
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for that. I'll just have a look at the questions here. And I've got a couple as well. And just say I have connected with, well, I've just sent you a request on LinkedIn because I'd like to chat about this a bit more. So Great. We've got a question from Joel who says, hi, Jeff. We aren't more internet accessible. I don't know that. What are you trying to say, Joel? Why aren't more internet accessible remotely, given that more and more reliance on cloud-based systems seem odd that we have to be on a network to access internet? That's true.
I think that's why there are so many new intranet providers, because for that exact reason. Obviously, on-prem, many companies have Microsoft SharePoint on premises. There is now Microsoft in the cloud, SharePoint in the cloud. So that's good. But yeah, to the extent that an intranet isn't accessible, or if the way in which it appears, it renders on a mobile device isn't good, the reality is employees aren't going to use it, right? And most older versions of SharePoint on mobile are not very good. And also the fact is that older versions of SharePoint were created maybe decades ago. So content has been put into these intranets, for a long, long time. It's not very well organized. And you really need to be thinking about how, in this small screen, how is it going to render? How's it going to appear? That's really important. And, thinking about it from the mobile first perspective is critical.
Brilliant. And thanks, Joel, for that question. Do you think that because of the pandemic and, people were forced to work from home and remotely, that there has been a huge shift and, in the trend of how we communicate with each other because we had to?
Right.
So surely we've seen a spike in people looking at ways to communicate with each other. Do you think that's been done well? And do you think it'll go back, when we all go back to offices, if we do, because I know some employers really want to go back, will we just go back to bad habits?
So I hope not. What I would say is it's being done well by some companies and not as well by other companies. I think the one thing that COVID really did was it certainly put communications professionals at the forefront. Everyone was now, all eyes were on comms because they were the ones who were now having to deliver and make sure that information was getting out to people who weren't sitting in an office. At the same time, it made us all aware of where the holes exist and the fact that there are employees out there that we thought we had the ability to communicate with, but we didn't. So that's the purpose of this presentation. And I hope that those who listened in will now go back and look at their different solutions and ask the question, am I able to get information to everybody? Because if you're not, then why, right? There are ways to get information to everybody. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. So to your question, will we go back to our old ways? I sure hope not. I think that, from the communications perspective, let's not view, and I've been talking about this quite a bit, let's not view the COVID pandemic as just another crisis that is going to come and go. Yes, it should go away sooner than later, but let's take advantage of what we've achieved over the past year and a half and continue to make the point that we are in communications a really critical part, a really critical function to an organization and to the success of their business.
Yeah, that's a great answer. We've got another question here from Asif, who says, with lots of colleagues working from home and a massive increase in screen time, should comms teams look at non-digital channels to encourage breaks from the screen?
We should never get away from looking at each other, picking up the telephone and speaking with one another. It's funny. Last night I had dinner with my nephew, and the first thing he did was sat down, and before he even said hello, he started looking at his phone. I was thinking, just scratching my head that, this can't be, So the answer is there's got to be a healthy mix of both. Technology was created to help us, to help businesses. So let's take advantage of it. And certainly mobile technology has given us the ability to go right straight to the end user, right? Like we never before, until it was 2011, 2012, when mobile technology really started to proliferate. Prior to that, we didn't know if our messages, our communications were necessarily getting to the end, at the end user. Now we can. So let's take advantage of it for that purpose, but let's not ever lose sight of the fact that we're humans and, touch, feel, look each other in the eye. You can really be much more, we can't always hide behind text messages.
Yeah, that's true. And I know because I'm quite a sociable person, and I know a lot of comms people are, and we're always connected to different departments. So when lockdown hit, I honestly did enjoy time working on my own. Mm-hmm. In a little spare bedroom with a desk, and I loved it. But there is only a shelf life, because you do crave that interaction again and FaceTime and all of that. So I do understand that, and it's about a healthy balance. Just going back to when you say reaching all the different employees in your organization, I suppose for comms people as well, as senior management, would be that we have to listen as well, because from experience, being in different roles and being in the comms role, we do send out employee surveys, but do we actually really listen to what they're saying? And I feel like when that really did happen was during COVID, because you had to get messages to them and relay them back and stuff. So people were listening to everybody and what they needed. Yeah. So it's just, we need to do that, I would say. So it was more of a comment about.
Yeah, and I think surveys have been around for a long, long time. They're a critical component of how we learn from our employees, and we should continue to to use surveys. I think a couple of thoughts on that. One is, I'm sure this is not anything that people haven't already thought about. If we're going to ask employees for their feedback, we need to deliver on or react to what they tell us, right? Otherwise, it's a credibility. It can become a credibility issue. The other thing is, there's different ways in which to encourage two-way engagement and collaboration. And technology, once again, can facilitate that. So it doesn't have to be a very long survey that people have to fill out by way of paper or at a desktop computer. We can have short form surveys where, making a survey more accessible through mobile. Okay, so I don't need to actually sit down for 2 hours to respond. I can maybe sit and watch the television and multitask and accomplish a lot. So there's different ways now through technology to be able to push out surveys. Again, knowing that once you get the response, you need to react accordingly. And then also, let's not forget about two-way engagement and communications, and the fact that there are, as I mentioned during my presentation, we do have chat, there's messaging. There are ways to further dialogue, whether it be between individuals within a company or maybe between employees and leadership, giving employees the ability to ask questions of leadership and for them to react in a real-time way. This is now something that we have the ability to do.
Lovely stuff. We have had another question just come in from Alison, who says, do you have examples of companies who are doing it right, engaging with deskless workers, and what apps they have used?
I
was going to ask you before when you mentioned them, but I didn't know if you wanted a name check.
So companies that are doing it well, I'm going to use some companies from my past. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to, but I mentioned Caesars Entertainment in my presentation. They are a company that has done it very, very well. And in fact, they started, with the challenge. The problem that they were looking to solve was get information to everybody, to make sure that all employees were communicated with. But then they realized that there were ways through technologies, through applications, mobile applications, that they could become more granular and go more local. Having managers in certain regions or in certain properties to be able to communicate. Currently, BrewDog in the UK is using Staffbase. There are some very large companies in manufacturing, healthcare, hospital systems, that employ largely non-desk workers who are taking advantage of solutions like Staffbase. That makes it quite easy to have your own branded application available for employees in the app stores. So, it's still relatively new. We're still at a very early juncture, but I think there is recognition that the mobile device is a go-to place for individuals to get their information. So you kind of need to have something in a way that employees are able to retrieve information in an easily digestible way, easy to consume way. That's really important, is that end user experience. More and more companies are waking up to realizing that there is this ECA, employee communications application market, that gives them that opportunity. And fortunately, I'm working with Staffbase. I had my own mobile employee communications company that kind of pioneered this opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. Are you going to stay around? Because I know you're in the morning zone there, aren't you, as we're going to the afternoon, but we do have a social lounge if you want to stay around.
Yeah, for sure. I'll pop into the social lounge and see if there's any other questions. I'd love to meet with many of you. Also, you as I mentioned, please LinkedIn connect with me and or email me.
Are you on Twitter or any of the other social channels? Is it mainly LinkedIn?
I'm primarily LinkedIn, Twitter occasionally, but not so active.
Okay, we'll exchange tips then on Twitter and LinkedIn.
Yeah, beautiful.
Jeff's a LinkedIn fan. I'm a Twitter fan. So yeah, I'm sure we can exchange tips. Brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm just going to, can everyone show some emoji love to Jeff? Because that was great. Brilliant work. We have got some competitions running where we will pick the winners at the end of the day, and then Anik will mention them every morning. So just jump on the tables, tweet us with the hashtag commsHERO, and you'll be in that prize draw to win Sharpies that we all love, a daily diary, some pets at home vouchers, and Amazon gift vouchers as well. So do enter that, and we shall see you in the social lounge. Thanks again, Jeff.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.